Hey, what's up everyone? It's Jordy's Beats here, and in this video, I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about why I started producing my own beats and why I started to produce for other artists. I'm going to talk about how I got into music production. And the third and final topic that I'm going to talk about today is why you maybe want to start to get into music production. And I'm not necessarily talking about selling your beats to artists. I'm just talking about maybe making beats for yourself. Right, let's get into the first topic. Why I got into music production. The reason why I wanted to get into music production was constantly when I was going through beats that I owned, I had a struggle because I had a certain vibe in mind and a certain kind of instrumentation. And then I was like, there is no instrumental right now in my inventory that fits the kind of style that I want. And you know, that happens once and you move on to a different idea and that works, and then you start working on that. But guess what? In a couple weeks or months, the same problem arises. And then you start to ask yourself the question, okay, what are we going to do now? In my mind, I had two options. Either contact producers to make a custom beat for me, and option two was learning how to make beats myself. Now, the first option might not be bad if you have a larger budget. I mean, custom beats, I'm not going to name prices, but if you have a budget, you can always do that, of course. I mean, if you just want to be an artist per se, then that might be your best solution. But in my case, I don't have a large budget, at least not big enough to purchase a lot of custom beats. So then I had one other option, and that is getting into producing beats. So that was my reason, because I had this problem so many times to where like I was thinking, okay, I want that vibe, I want that instrumentation, and I just didn't have it. So the only option is to then create it. And that brings us to the second topic. How did I get into music production? Well, it's no secret that I have watched a lot of producers on YouTube, and also there are a lot of producers who make tutorials on making beats. And I have been watching them for a couple months in the stage where I'm talking about now. So I'm not making beats yet. I'm just going through YouTube and see how people do it. And then I was like, okay, so if I decided that I need to make my own beats, then how are we going to learn making beats? Now, this might be a tricky part of the subject, and I don't want to get in too much detail because then we have an entirely separate video. But most people will probably tell you, if you want to learn how to make beats, you have to learn music theory first. Well, I'm here with a shocker. You don't necessarily have to. Does it have benefits to know about music theory? Absolutely. But you don't have to. Some of you might ask, why not? Here's my case. So I've been searching on YouTube for quite a while, and then I stumble across the channel Busyworks Beats. Now, I didn't find his beats particularly interesting. However, he did have quite a good new system, and that is, instead of using a scale to make music, you're learning chord codes. And that just means that you only have to memorize the numbers. Now, I'm not going to explain the whole system here. If you want to watch it, I'll leave a card right here or here. I'm not sure yet. But There you can find how that system works. And I thought, okay, well, this might be a system that works. And also, one other thing that I forgot to mention, I saw him working in FL Studio 12. Now, the last version I ever used of FL Studio was FL9, I believe, or 8. And to me, back in the day, it seemed really complex. But if you take into consideration that I now had a motivation to learn the DAW and learn how to utilize its features, that of course is a whole different way of getting into a program. So I dedicated some time in learning the program, and I also invested time in learning the chord codes and using the chord codes to make melodies and whole beats. Now, they weren't particularly interesting because even if you know how to make music now, you still have to find a way to get the idea that you have in your mind into your DAW. Or you can just click in random notes and go from there. That is what I did for a long time, and then I just used the chord codes to make chords. And then here is where the music theory would really benefit, because if you know a scale and you know how it works, then that can really help you to get the process done faster. And that is somewhere where I really see that the music theory can indeed be beneficial. However, I quite often choose a different approach, because after making so many beats, and they weren't even good, but by practicing, you learn to hear where you want to go next. And you hear like, okay, if I hear this note, this is where I want to go. And if you do that long enough, you start to develop an ear, and you start to learn how it works, how it works that if you start on one note, which note you have to go to next. And then if you combine that with knowing the chord codes, then you can make melodies. Now, that won't be the most beneficial method for everybody, but that is how I did it for a very long time. And now, the process where I'm in now is that I'm deciding, do I want to learn more music theory, or is this enough? And at this point, I think I'm fine. And maybe after a while, I start to pick up on music theory again. So yeah, that is how and why I got into production. And that brings me to the third topic: why, as an artist, you might want to get into music production as well. Or in this case, creating your own beats. Now, maybe you suffer from the same situation that I had, like where you have an idea, but there is no beat that fits that idea. And then if you know how to make it, then you can do it yourself. The second reason why you might want to get into music production is the second case. Say you are rapping or singing to free beats right now because you don't have the money to buy an instrumental. You have produced for a little while and you're getting better. Then if you know how to make beats now, that's another skill in your toolbox. So now you can expand and you can say, okay, maybe I can also start to sell my beats. That's another thing why you might want to get into production, because that's how I started. I started rapping under Big Thoughts. After a while, as I explained earlier in the video, I started to get into production. So that might be a route for you as well. And, that might raise the question like, so does an artist not need a producer? I'm not saying that, because there are many artists who just want to stay artists and just use instrumentals that are handed to them. And that is completely fine. I'm just saying there are cases where you might want to learn to do it yourself. Now, those are some reasons you might want to get into music production. If you in the end do plan to sell your beats, do realize that there's no get rich quick scheme. It takes a lot of work. I mean, even if you learn how to make the musical part of it, you also have to learn the mixing, the marketing, the connecting with people. So don't think it's going to be easy. I'm just telling you that there are cases why you might want to start doing it yourself. The question that I want to end this video on today is, why would you get into music production? And is there something that you're hesitating about in terms of getting into music production? Leave your questions down below and I'll answer them as soon as I can. And if somebody else has to answer, of course, also interact with each other. I'll catch you guys later. And I say, peace out.